Good Monday morning, all of my beautiful intuitive butterflies, and welcome to the Monday, July 25th weekly reading. So let's start today. As you can see, my background is a little bit different from what you're used to seeing this week. I am traveling this week. I am up on my good friend Sherry's farm. She lives about half an hour outside of Waco, Texas. So yes, I have left Mexico and I am up in Texas visiting my girlfriend, doing a little bit of American shopping, and yeah, catching up with some really, truly good, honest, wonderful people. Sherry and I met when both of our children were 2 years old. Our children are about 6 months apart. And if you pick up my book, Memoirs of a Single Traveling Mom, and read that book, you'll know that I spent some time in Texas when my son Toby was 2 years old. And that's where I met Sherry. And we've kept in touch all this time, and here I am visiting. So let's get started for our Monday weekly reading. As a traveler, we have to adapt. And so instead of doing smudge this morning, it's along the same lines, but I do have an incense box. I've got my incense stick in there. So let's get started. So let's open this back up. I don't want to burn Sherry's house down. So let's call upon the angels, animals, ancestors, the Creator, and Mother Earth. We're going to call in the 4 directions as well as spirit. So we're going to call in the east where the sun rises, the south where the sun burns hottest. We're going to call in the energy of the west where the sun sets, and the energy of the north. We're going to smudge all of you. And we're going to wave this all the way around. And we're going to smudge each of the decks of cards today. And we call in the energy of spirit. All right, let's set that off to the side. Today I am burning Nag Champa, which is my favorite scent. And we're going to have just this smoke wafting over top of us the entire time. So maybe it'll kind of give it a romantic feel or something. Okay, so for today, we are once again going to have 3 separate piles of cards. But today we're going to use 3 separate decks. So what I'd like is I'm going to introduce you to each of the 3 decks of cards. And as I'm introducing them to you, feel which deck you are most drawn to, which one feels most comfortable. I think I'm going to have to move this. Let's move this up over here to the other side. Okay. All right. So decide which deck of cards you are most drawn to as I introduce each deck of cards to you. And then we're going to do a reading for each of the decks, including what you are being guided to concentrate on this week and what the shadow is for this week, what the underlying issues could bubble up from below the surface. So for those of you that follow my Facebook page, you will know that I got a new deck of cards this week. And incidentally, I did a card pull just to see what the deck was talking about. This is the new deck. It's called Messages from Spirit, from the Spirits of Nature. It's by Stephen D. Farmer. And incidentally, the card on the very bottom right now is the Desert card, the Thirst card. And this is the card that came up earlier this week when I did the very first card pull from this deck. This is the Desert card, the Thirst card. And this card represents that a lot of us at this time, having just come through COVID, having woken up from a long slumber of isolation from our fellow mankind and womankind, we're realizing that there's something missing from our lives. We're thirsting after something a little bit more spiritual. So because this card was so accurate from this deck in the very first reading, I've decided that I'm going to integrate it today, but I'm not going to use this deck for the entire reading because I am still getting used to it. I may actually peek at the book today, but we're just going to slip this back into the center of the deck. All right, we're going to cleanse this, clear it. Okay, so if you are drawn to pile number 1 this week, you will be having cards pulled from the messages from the Spirits of Nature deck. If you are drawn to pile number 2 this week, you will be having cards pulled from the Osho Zen Tarot. And I think some of you have seen cards pulled from this deck before. So if you are called to pile number 2, this will be your deck, the Osho Zen. And being that I am traveling this week, if you are called to pile number 3, I have opted to use the Denise Lynn Sacred Traveler deck, seeing as I'm traveling this week. And just to show you some of the cards that are in this deck so that you can make a better decision about which ones you're drawn to. So let's begin. For those of you that selected pile number 1 and the messages from the Spirits of Nature cards, what does this week hold for you? The top card, when I finish mixing, will be what this week holds for you. And the bottom card will be the shadow aspect of this week. Okay, we've just had a card fall out, so I'm going to stop mixing and turn this card over. Okay, so for those of you that picked pile number 1 this week, you are being guided to, I'm getting a notification, we're going to shut that down. Okay, you are being guided to the eagle and vision. So just let that sit for a moment and sink in for a moment. Okay. Generally, we're dealing with oracle cards, and the eagle comes up. The eagle does in fact represent vision. The eagle has some of the best vision out of any creature that we know of on the planet. They also have the ability to dive and go after their prey at astonishing speeds. So once they actually see what they want with their eagle-eyed vision, they go after their prey, and they go after their prey with intention, speed. The word that I'm looking for is with a veracity. Yeah. So this week, those of you who selected pile number 1, I'm going to tell you this card is asking you to take some time, get really, really clear on your vision of what you want. Okay. What's coming up for me is that some of you are sensing, just as the desert card was representing sort of on a global scale, that there's a thirsting, there's something that you want. It's hidden just below the surface and you're not sure what's missing, what you're thirsting after, but you know there's something else out there. And this card, the Eagle Vision card, is asking you to get really clear on what that is. That may mean going quietly within, doing some meditation, doing some real internal work, like what do I want in my life? As I mentioned earlier in the video, we are coming out of what could be considered a 2 or 2.5 year slumber. And as we know, when we wake up from a really, really deep sleep or a really long slumber, we have a fogginess about us. We know that our dreams were really clear and vivid, but as we wake up, there's some fogginess. And this card this week, for those of you that picked pile number 1, is really asking you to get clear on your vision of what you want for the future and ultimately go after it. What I'm hearing in my head is that concentrate today, Monday through Thursday, maybe into Friday morning. Really pay attention to your dreams this week, group number 1, particularly right before you awaken. Make sure that what you are seeing in your dreams, just in that instant before you wake up, is really clear. That's your vision. And I'm sensing that by Friday, you're going to be wanting to wake up and go after that vision. Once that vision is really, really clear, you're going to be wanting to go after it. The same way that an eagle does. You know, an eagle floats above here and they wait and they fly. But when they see their prey, they go after it, and they go after it hard, right? Like they dive. So as I mentioned, I was going to cheat a little bit and look at the book. Yeah. So you're caught up in too many details of living. You're easily distracted at this time. You're feeling overwhelmed. So step back from your tasks for a moment and see the bigger picture. Really, really focus on your visualizations of what you want and then go after them. Okay, that's kind of the general message of the book, and that was what I was picking up for you intuitively for these cards. So let's see what's on the bottom that will be the shadow this week that may distract you or prevent you from going after your vision and getting clear on your vision. And what you've got is tobacco. This is the card that's on the bottom, the tobacco card, and reciprocity. Okay. So normally if I were to get this card not in the shadow position, this card would be looking at reciprocity as something that you're bringing into your life in a really positive way. But in this particular situation, I'm going to say that coming up in the shadow position, the reciprocity is all about sharing, right? And the indigenous people of North America used tobacco for sharing. You know, they put it in the peace pipe. The peace pipe was passed around. It was called peace pipe in order to promote peace and sharing and reciprocity. Because this card came up in the shadow position for you, group number 1, I'm going to say that the message this week is until your vision is really clear, you're not meant to be sharing it. Because the other thing about the tobacco and the reciprocity is about communication. The other message is communication, clear communication, right? Because if the idea is a peace pipe and the idea is sharing for the purposes of peace, if the message isn't clear, if the message that you're sharing isn't clear, then miscommunications can happen. And that's what's coming up this week for you in your shadow position, group number 1. So your concentration this week, what you were meant to be working on, is getting really, really clear on your vision. And if you can get really clear on your vision, I'm thinking by Friday of this week, you're going to start to be able to put things in place to go after that vision, right? It's like an eagle going after its prey. But don't be sharing what that vision is yet, because there's an opportunity there for miscommunication, because this is in the shadow position. So that's my message for group number 1 this week. So I'm going to leave that with you. Thank you so much. And we're going to move on to group number 2. Those of you that selected the Osho Zen Tarot this week. All right, sorry about that. I'm used to only having one person in the house when I'm recording videos, and he knows to be quiet and go away. But yeah, being at my girlfriend's house, there's a lot more bodies in here and a lot more voices. So let's move on to those of you who selected pile number 2 for this week from the Osho Zen. What is in store? Let's pick the card for pile number 2 to be guided to this week. So you're going to notice that there's one card as I was shuffling that stuck up. It also poked me in one finger here, and that's usually my indication that that's the correct card. So we're going to stop mixing right now. Okay. For those of you that selected pile number 2 in the Osho Zen this week, you are being called to trust this week. This is your message. So you'll notice that the figure on the card is just floating. I mean, they're flying through the air. It's like they've taken a leap of faith and they've just jumped. And they trust that they will be cared for and looked after. This is also one of the water cards. You'll notice down at the bottom, I'm hoping the color's coming through okay. Down at the bottom in this little square, it's blue. Okay. And this is representative of the cups in the traditional tarot deck. In this deck, it's just representing water. Water is all about flowing. If you think about the ocean flows, lakes flow, rivers flow, streams flow, and they're fluid. They go where they're meant to go. They trust that as they start coming out of the side of a mountain, they trust that they're just intended to flow down the side of the mountain, and that's where they're meant to go. So unlike pile number 1 this week, which was the eagle, which was getting clear on a vision and then really going after it, because an eagle goes after its prey, this card for pile number 2 is more about going with the flow this week and trusting that you're being drawn into what you are meant to be drawn into. That doesn't mean to necessarily be completely passive this week. That's the message that's coming up for me, is that you're not supposed to be completely passive this week, but you are supposed to trust that what comes up for you is the right thing. Okay. What is your shadow this week? For those of you that were choosing pile number 2, your shadow this week is success. Okay, this is becoming really clear. This is becoming really clear for me about your message this week. Those of you that selected pile number 2 this week, you have a shadow of success. When the success card comes up in a shadow position, it's an indication that there is almost a fear of success, that there are self-sabotage patterns going on. Normally, the success card is a card of action. It's the fire card. It's red down here in this bottom little square. But when it comes up in the shadow position, it's indicating that there's something bubbling below the surface that's not allowing you to move forward in your life. What's not allowing you to move forward right now is that you're not trusting yourself. You're not going with the flow. You're not trusting that the messages that you're hearing are the right ones for you. You're questioning that. And when you question something unusual that comes into your life and go, oh, that wasn't meant for me. That's not right for me. And you're kind of always pushing it away. What you're doing is you're sabotaging the success that the universe and creator are trying to bring to you. I'm getting a message for you, those of you that chose pile number 2, to really pay attention to signs this week. Pay attention to, is there an unusual bird or animal that crosses your path? You know, I'm not talking about the hummingbird that comes to your window every day. That's not unusual. I'm talking about, is there something really unusual that comes up? And I'm really sensing that it's going to be something in nature. But something unusual, there's going to be perhaps a video that comes up in your suggested news feed that's really out of the ordinary for you. Pay attention to that. There's a message in that for you, pile number 2, and really, really trust the information that's coming to you. There's definitely going to be something, I want to say close to the middle of the week, around Wednesday. Yeah, I'm coming up with Wednesday. It's coming up really clearly that it's either going to be an animal that comes up that's unusual for your area, or there's going to be something that comes up in a suggested news feed, a video or something that's unusual. Watch the animal for its behavior and pay attention, or watch the video and pay close attention to it, because there's something there. There's definitely a message coming in for you this week, but you have to trust that that message is actually intended for you. And when you do trust it and pay attention, then you can have success. This success card will come out of the shadow position for you. But right now, this is in the shadow position because you're just not paying attention. You're not trusting that the messages and information that's coming up is actually intended for you. You're going, oh, that's meant for someone else. It's not. It's meant for you. Okay. So I'm going to leave that with you. I know that sounds a little bit convoluted, but trust me, those of you that selected pile number 2, trust. Trust that's what's happening to you this week. Trust that the messages you see, trust that the unusual little things that you see are messages for you. And there's nothing wrong with the other thing that I'm being guided to tell you this week, those of you that picked pile number 2, and actually this message is for anybody. If an unusual animal, for example, comes up across your path and you're going, what does that mean? You know, like, for example, I've never seen an armadillo in real life. I've seen lots of pictures of them, but I've never seen a real one. I'm in Texas. Yes, they're normal here, but they're also kind of shy creatures, you know. If I were to see an armadillo this week, I'd be like, there's a message in that for me. I need to look up what the meaning is, because I don't come across armadillos all the time. So I really don't know what the spiritual meaning of an armadillo crossing my path means. And there's nothing wrong with Googling that. I do, however, suggest that if you are going to Google what the spiritual meaning is of an unusual animal that crosses your path, or something else that crosses your path this week, look at the meaning from 2 or 3 different sources. Don't just Google it and click on the first one and go, yep, that's what the meaning is. Because oftentimes those spiritual meanings of a dream, or something that you see in a dream, you know, oh, I saw a knife in a dream. What does it mean? Oh, I saw an earthquake in a dream. What does it mean? If you Google and look up just the very first one and put all your faith in it, that's one person's interpretation of what that means. So look up 2 or 3, hit 2 or 3 different web links if you are going to do some research on the spiritual meaning of unusual things that cross your path. And then come to your own conclusions about what that means for you, what resonates with you. Okay, so just a little tidbit there. There's nothing wrong with looking up the spiritual meaning of different things that we see, but look up 2 or 3 of them for sure. You absolutely have to look up 2 or 3 of them. Okay. All right, we're going to move on to those of you that selected pile number 3 this week. I just need a sip of water here. It's hot here. It is 10 o'clock in the morning and it's already 30 degrees outside. So yeah, definitely consuming a whole lot of water and clear soda right now. Okay, for those of you that selected pile number 3 this week, we're going to be pulling from the Sacred Traveler deck. This deck is by Denise Lynn. Okay, so Sacred Traveler deck, those that selected pile number 3, what message do they need to hear this week? All right. Oh, and yep, there we go. We've got that card poking me and sticking up. So that's going to be the card we're going to pick. So for those of you that selected pile number 3 and the Sacred Traveler deck this week, your message and what you need to concentrate on this week is valiant courage. Take action with passion this week. Okay. So for pile number 1, they had the eagle and the vision, and the message is that their vision wasn't clear enough to actually be going after what they wanted just yet. Pile number 2 was kind of similar in that they weren't trusting what was coming along. They were being told to trust. For pile number 3 this week, you are being guided to act with courage this week and go after what you want. Take action and have passion and excitement. I mean, what else can I say about this card? You know, the other cards that came up this week required guidance and required a lot more information. This one is just really obvious. I mean, you've got a knight riding his horse, and you're being asked to take action this week. That action may look like accepting the job that you've been on the fence about, or taking that action to quit the job that you've hated for a long time because there's something else in the works, or finally make a commitment to the person that you've been dating for a couple of weeks and you weren't sure if you were gonna, you know, really get exclusive and get in there. Okay, I'm being guided to say, even if it's medical treatment of some kind that you have been considering, I'm not talking about going out and doing some serious cutting and snipping and stuff. I'm more hearing self-care. Okay, for pile number 3, take action with passion. On the kind of the medical side of things, I'm hearing, if you've been thinking about some self-care, whether that be going and getting a manicure, going and getting a massage, maybe it's time to go see your chiropractor. You haven't gone for a little while, but you're feeling like maybe you need to, maybe not, maybe money's tight right now, especially with the economy doing what it's doing. This card is asking you this week to take action with passion. Okay. whether that is self-care, whether that relates to your career. Maybe it means walking into your boss's office and say, hey, I've been here for 5 years and I've only had one raise. Whatever has been lacking in courage in your life, where you've kind of been stepping back, maybe not taking as good care of yourself as you should. This card this week, for those of you that selected pile number 3, is really a call to action. Okay, let's see what your shadow is this week. Shadow: traveling lightly and simplifying your life. Okay, perfect. A lot of the times when we are not acting with courage, when we're not taking the action that we need to, it's because our lives are too complicated. We've got too much going on. We've got too much baggage, got too much clutter. We've got too much going on up here. We haven't simplified things. Making lists, whether those lists are on your phone, you know, you've downloaded an app and you've done a list, or whether you're old school like I am and you still go for, you know, pen and piece of paper. Simplify your life this week. That is your shadow this week. Your shadow is indicating that part of the reason you haven't taken that step forward to act, you know, with passion, is because you got too much baggage right now. So you are being called this week. Reduce your load, simplify, make lists is what's coming up for me intuitively. Simplify. And again, you know, a lot of what came up this week, that's a message for a lot of us right now, is to simplify and get really clear on our messages, right? Get clear on what we want so that we can go after it. Both the eagle and the take action with passion card, both of these cards are cards asking us to move forward, right? The trust card is a card asking us to move forward. So I'm going to leave that with all of you this week. Thank you so much for joining me this beautiful Monday morning. I trust that the cards had good, positive, clear messages for you to help you and guide you through this week. I know that working with the cards and trusting the messages that I receive each day really helped me to get through each day. And so thank you so much, my beautiful intuitive butterflies. Watch this space. I'm going to be playing with these new cards a little bit more this week. And there will be little juicy tidbits. I believe we have a new moon coming up later this week as well. So given that there's a new moon coming up later this week, release the last vestiges of whatever it was that you chose to release on the full moon. Sweep the last vestiges of that which no longer serves you out the door this week. And enjoy.